Welcome to another episode of the Life Sciences Professional Podcast. Today, I have a guest, Lisa Jacobs, who is in the medical device industry, who has tremendous experience building and expanding sales and businesses across global and local markets within the US. I'm really excited to have a conversation with Lisa to talk about what her journey has been, but also what she has done to help many other individuals within the medical device industry. Please help me in welcoming her to our podcast today. Well, welcome, Lisa. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm sure our guests will really appreciate the information that you have to share in terms of your experience and everything. But before we get started, if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling our guests a bit about your background, and if you don't mind just sharing, that'd be awesome.
Thank you, Linda, and appreciate you for having me on today. My background is I started actually as a registered dietitian, which I had a master's in nutrition and loved the healthcare arena. My father had kidney failure when I was quite young, and really wanted to learn how to help him. So that was my motivation for getting into nutrition in the healthcare arena. And quickly worked my way up to be a chief dietitian and was approached by Abbott Labs and sold nutritional products from them. And why I chose to go into sales was I was counseling patients one-on-one and thought I could make a greater difference in patients' life by spreading the word of good nutrition and new products to physicians at that time. And my career has really been built on that, making that one large change. I went from nutrition and sales, and I was out in the field and was approached by a manager who had a cholesterol lowering drug, and that was Merck. And I sold Zocor and Vioxx at the time and went into pharmaceutical, which really set me up to really understand white papers, really to hone my skills on sales training. I believe pharmaceuticals training is superb of learning elevator speeches and pitches. So, and then I wanted to try something different. So I interviewed for medical device sales, and I got said no to often until someone said yes to me. And I went into orthopedic sales from there, and I never looked back. I love medical device sales, have been doing it for 20 plus years, and half my time has been in orthopedics and half my time has been in spine. So, my education was very different to compare to where I was today, but every role I've taken has prepared me to my current role, which is Vice President of US Sales for Excellis.
Fantastic. And, it's interesting you say, going from pharmaceutical to medical device, right? Because they're, working with lots of clients and they're recruiting. It's often they're closed-minded about pharmaceutical and believe that, they can't make that transition. And so I'm sure you did have lots of individuals say to you, absolutely no, that they're not interested in interviewing you. But to your point, in pharmaceutical, that the training is fantastic, right? They really teach you to understand the white papers, teach you, like you said, the elevator speech, and sales training is fantastic. Where a lot of times we go into medical device, they'll teach you about the products, right? And teach you about the customers, but not necessarily support in the sales training, right?
Correct.
And, so that's, very interesting that medical device industry doesn't necessarily see the benefit of that transferable skills from the pharmaceutical and bringing them over. So I often work with our clients to help them understand, what, you're looking for talent in the medical device and it's really hard to find them. We need to start to think about bringing individuals from other industries or other life sciences and transferring them over. So you're a good example of how successful it can be.
Yeah, and it's also hard to, when you're a salesperson, to change silos. So, even when I was wanting to get out of orthopedics and try spine, it was a good 6 months before I found a company who was willing to see my skill set could transition overly to spine, because they want your Rolodex. And when you've been successful, they want those relationships. So it is an interesting time in med device where I think people need to look at people's skill sets. I believe there's some skills that you cannot teach. And I look at that when I'm hiring folks, so I don't necessarily look at someone's Rolodex, because I believe that when people promise you they can bring over relationships, they usually don't bring over half of what they promise and the revenue number. So I'm really looking at that person, their skill set and their hunger to win and to really execute on something different.
So when you're referring to that, are you talking about aptitude, attitude, motivation? Are those the things that you look for?
I do. And, being self-motivated, being a positive influence, being a team player, and really are hungry to learn and to get out there. And, this industry is a challenge. You get said no to more than you get said yes to. So being able to, what's your reaction to that? And how do you pick yourself up every day and continue to drive home? And having that passion and believing in the products and the company. If you have that, you will be successful. So I always say I'm probably one of your best salesperson when I believe in the products and I believe in the team. And I'm probably one of your worst when I don't, because it shines through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I would agree with that. It's when I was in sales, selling products, and, I sold some disruptive technologies that were so different, selling against gauze and launching wound care products that were, putting them inside wounds that, nurses and doctors were like, absolutely no, there's no way. And it was a lot more expensive than, a 30-cent gauze. But I knew the difference it could make in patients healing and nursing time and just, overall benefiting the healthcare costs. So I was so passionate about it. I mean, I could just sell it all day long, every day. But to your point, right? And I was very successful because of that. I just believe so passionately of the products that I sold. And, to your point, if you have somebody that does that, it's game over for the competitors, right? That's for sure. Yeah. And I know when we had conversations about individuals that are looking to be successful in the industry, and especially females considering moving up and advancing their careers. You yourself, as you've had some challenges along the way. What advice would you give females that are considering advancing in the medical device industry? And we both have been in the medical device industry as females, as mothers, and what do you want to say? Fight your way through some of the challenges. I could say my own comments on that, but I won't. I'll let you speak to it. What advice would you give?
So it's funny. I was listening to a podcast on my drive in this morning, and I was listening to a woman who's talking about diversity in the workplace. And I thought about this, and what she said was bullshit like a man. But what does that? what does that mean? It means be bold, be confident, ask for what you want. When you're giving a presentation or a pitch, I think women feel like they need to fully understand every fact in detail. You see men and they don't, right? They are confident even if they're, a little gray on the areas that they're presenting. But when you get up there, you need to own it. You need to be present. You have to be incredibly confident. You have to prepare yourself. If don't only know your product, but know your procedure. I remember early in the days where every night I was learning about procedures and have the instruments and put them back in the trays myself and understand the workings of it, but know everything inside and out and know the vocabulary that you're speaking to your audience. But when you're pitching, presenting, you need to be even more confident and really own what you want. The other thing is, we don't ask for what we want. We feel like we need to earn it instead of asking for it. So when you're going in for your salary, I've done it myself for years, where men unapologetically go in and ask for the most amount of money they can ask for without laughing when they're doing it, right? We feel like we need to deserve it and own that promotion. We need to own that job. When we get a seat at the table, ask questions, be vocal, don't sit down and have your head and taking notes. It's okay to be as confident and ask for what you want. So when I thought about what does she mean by that, I believe that's what it means, bullshitting like a man, is really just being incredibly bold and knowing your worth. And what you believe you deserve is what other people will think you deserve. So I think that we know that we need to deserve it without working extra hard to earn the same spot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And when you think of the medical device industry today, what do you think the percentage of women are in the industry now? I know there's an increase. I notice it ourselves, obviously recruiting in it. And I've seen changes over the last 22 years that I've been recruiting in it. I've been in the industry a little longer than that. But what do you think is the percentage, or
I think it's definitely growing when you go to trade shows, or I go to medical sales college. There are a lot more women, and I, see it also on LinkedIn. However, I believe in upper level management in the C-suite, there is still a very small percentage. I think it was about 5%, especially in orthopedics and spine industry, are in the C-suite. I still see a very white male dominant in the boardrooms and in the C-suite. And I feel as if, that is where it's hard to get to the next level. Is, you can get to, but you see a few women who are CEOs or on board seats of medical device companies. And that's where I would like to see more, because that's where change happens. And that's what will happen to lead the way for other women to get those seats and figure out how to be there. So, as much as I want to earn a position, not because I'm a woman, but because I'm the right person for the job, I think that we have to own that. There should be women in those rooms because we offer a different viewpoint or have different skill set, or we have exactly the same skill set and we deserve a seat at the table as well. But that's where I see the big barrier to entry is more in the C-suite roles for medical device.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, do you think that's because they are not given the opportunity, or aren't sure how to go about it, or they don't want it?
A little of both. I think that, and I think that we feel like we need to earn it more. I mean, sometimes you see a lot of mediocre men in positions, right? Who you're asking, why are they a CFO, or how did they get there? And I think women, you feel like you have to have all the degrees behind your name, or you have to have all the accolades to earn a seat at that table, where I see that men don't feel that way.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to ask for it, and we have to ask for what we want. So, in reviews, asking, I would like to get into this next role. What do I need to do to get there? And be so bold to have those conversations with your upper level management.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember when a management role had come into our organization. I hadn't had children yet. And the manager had been restructured out of our organization. And the team was all women. And I had gone to the president and said, I wanted the role. And his comment to me was he didn't feel that that was a good idea. And when I asked him why, he said it was because, I'd be managing other women and I was going to have children. I
But men,
was like,
but men can have children, right?
yeah, exactly.
All of them have
So
children. So
I
yeah.
was like dumbfounded. So I went, like I told him at the time, I didn't think that that was fair at all. And now this is like, 25, 26 years ago, whatever. So I went home and I told my husband, and my husband said, that is reality. That is the way things are. That's the way people think. I said, that's bullshit. I'm going back and I'm going to tell them that's not okay. The team wanted me to be the manager. I had the skills to be the manager. I'm going to fight for it. I went back and fought for it. And I got the job. But he made me keep my territory for a year while I did that job. But it was like, no, it wouldn't have happened to a man. But it
No.
happened to me.
Yes.
And that was fine. But the stress was absolutely astronomical.
Mhm.
Now, I did have a child a year later. Still, it was just some of the things you do as a woman that you would never have to do as a man, right?
Right. Yes.
But, it was what it was. And, it's your coping skills and your ability. But to have to fight for that or to prove that or to keep your job, right? Like the previous job at the same time you're doing the leadership role, to me,
Right.
nowadays I would have told them absolutely not. I'm doing the manager job and I'm going to hire someone to replace me. Like I would have handled it differently now, knowing what I know. But
Yeah, but we do that, right? We say yes to things that we know isn't right just because we feel like we need to.
yeah, it was just, I laugh at it now, but it was like, oh Lord, the stress was absolutely astronomical, right? Because
Yep.
you have to prove yourself, right? Prove that he's wrong, you're right.
Mhm.
It was really an incredible experience, but anyway, it is really funny. When we chatted earlier, one of the things that we talked about is individuals that don't have families, whether it be male or female, and some of the expectations that are put on them, because they don't have families, that there could be increased expectations. What has been your experience on that you've seen?
I have women I currently work with and also good friends in the industry who I've seen firsthand where they're asked to work extra weekends or holidays, or the late night dinners and the travel, because they don't have families, so it doesn't matter as much. Where that's their choice, and I don't think that that should be the case at all. Whether you have young kids at home or you have grown kids or you don't have children, I don't think that people should be required to do the extra type of work just because they chose not to have children or they don't have children currently. So it's not required of men, but it seems to be more required of women. In this industry, I see more of it, and something I would definitely would like to see change.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's in other industries too. I've seen it. I'm a nurse. I was an RN. And when I worked as an RN, they would do that like with Christmases or holidays. They would give them to you when you didn't have children and not to the people who had children. And, at the time, of course, I didn't mind. I didn't really care. But after a couple of years of that, you're thinking, well, I want to be with my family or my significant other, right? At the time. But it's just a thing that seems to happen. It's an assumption that you don't really have a life, or yours isn't as important, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not fair.
No, of course it's not. Yeah, it's just
Everyone needs their time off, and everyone, has a life, whether it's defined differently or not.
right. Yeah. And what is your opinion on the medical device industry and where it's going over the next few years as far as evolving? So many companies are merging. We see a couple of things happening. The larger companies are gobbling up, are merging together, right? But we also see a lot of new technologies starting, disruptive technologies, robotics and different things like that, the tech industry coming in. What do you see happening in the industry?
I do see the companies, less companies, smaller type of companies, more startup, less mid-sized companies, and less bigger companies. But I really see a very heavy focus on augmented reality, robotics, and also digital. Understanding data, the digital machine, the data with health records, workflow, rehab, aggregate data, pre-op, what happened post-op. And that type of data those analytics becoming more prevalent in healthcare. And even with robotics, I think robotics have only touched the industry so far, but there's a long way to go. And I see there a heavier influence on them. And then also to make them more of, there's such a labor shortage at the moment. And with the robots, if they can help not replace workers, but replace shortages, if they can hold an extra retractor or make the workflow simpler, I think that is going to make a huge impact currently. So your PAs or your scrub techs can do more high quality jobs than just holding retractors in the OR, but then also making them more cost effective. So the suburban hospitals and ASCs, as cases and surgeries are moving to ASCs, that we have a more cost effective model for those type of facilities, and not just the big $1.7 million systems that are currently out there. Mm-hmm. So I see a big move to that, and also different pricing strategies where it's not just a capital purchase, but you have lease options and subscription models, in different ways to have creative financing for these type of systems, with less training for the surgeon and a lower learning curve.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I some of the clients that we work with are exploring, and some are actually doing what you're talking about. But smart technologies are important in robotics. A lot of them are coming out of Israel, into the US with startups and stuff. So, I think to your point, we've got to do something with the staff shortages in the institutions, whether it be acute care or alternate markets, right? For better patient care and so forth. Yeah. What would you, and also for the medical device companies, we need to find more talent to be able to help represent these products right into institutions and so forth. And, part of that is encouraging females to come into the industry. And what advice would you give to new graduates or individuals who are in other industries, tips to help them enter the medical device industry? What would you recommend?
I would recommend go for it. Keep on interviewing, and always be interviewing, and hone your skills and get experience and internships during college if that's what you're interested in. Take the courses there's a lot of different courses now, which does give you a little leg up because it shows that you're committed, either medical sales college, or there's some agencies that teach sales training. It just helps your vernacular and help hone your sales skills. But always be out there interviewing and honing your skills, and be hungry. I really believe in, if you want something, you have to work hard for it. And sometimes it's a numbers game. You just have to interview with the right person, and then someone is going to give you a chance. I think it's interesting. You need to think about where you want to work, though, too, is really important. What sector do you want to be in? Do you want to be in orthopedic, spine, pain? There's just so many other areas to be in, but also who has the best training for you if you're new, because that's really important. If you go to, say, a distributor, you may be, have a senior rep where you can shadow them, and you can really hone your clinical skills that way. Or if you work for a larger company, you can have a great training program where they pay for it for 3 or 4 months, where you really learn your skills. I think it's very hard for a new person to come to a startup or a mid-sized company and get the training they need. So I think that it's something that you really need to think about. What are your personal goals, and really what type of company should you be interviewing with right now to get you where you want to be in 5 years?
Right. It's interesting when I interview candidates, whether they're like new grads trying to get into a role, or even experienced individuals, I find that they haven't done much, to your point, in terms of researching the industry, honing their skills, taking some training, even experienced reps. If they've maybe had training, like what you did in the beginning with pharmaceutical sales training, they don't continue to develop themselves. It just kind of stops there. So
Right.
you haven't taken additional, whether it be sales training or negotiation training or some other additional training. It could even be like computer training or anything for that matter. And, when I interview them, I always ask, what kind of development or training do you take? And it's nothing. They don't even go on LinkedIn and take the training that they have there. So I always recommend to them that, it's key that you show that you have initiative. It's not just the product training that you've taken in your organization. You have to show that you do invest in yourself and train outside of it. Even in my business, that every year I invest in myself and I take training because it does translate into success for myself every year, right? So it's interesting when I'm interviewing, I look for that. Do you look for that when you're interviewing candidates?
Absolutely. And I do. And I notice, my team when we're at trade shows, who are the members who want to go in and listen and learn at trade shows or just stand in the booth the entire time or, go to their room after their time at the booth, right? So still to this day, I go to lectures when I'm at trade shows. There's certain things I want to learn. I want to expand my knowledge and I want to see what surgeons are thinking and what they're developing. Because, the wonderful thing about this industry is you can always keep on learning and it's always changing. And that's what excites me about this. But again, professionally, you need to keep on honing your skill. But personally, we always can be better at negotiation or learning a new type of skill. And I always want to see that people are continuing to develop not only in themselves personally, but professionally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're an active mentor, both with internal teams, members, and external. Can you expand on that? Like you're very passionate about that. I've read that, I've heard that on podcasts that you've done. Why?
Why? Because I want to give back. I love this industry, but I know the challenges that I had early on in trying to navigate those. And I want to help people shorten their learning curve, right? And just be a safe place to go to. It's hard. It's very cutthroat. It's very competitive. And you always need someone who is there for your personal best interest in your growth. And I wish I had that earlier on. I wish I had a female mentor that I could go ask some questions to. Sometimes traveling with surgeons or distributors can be uncomfortable. So how do you navigate that? Or how do you navigate different type of situations where you're going up for a salary negotiation and you know that someone else is making more than you, but you're nervous to ask for what you believe you deserve. Just being a safe place to bounce ideas and thoughts on is really important to me. And I think that having a mentor is really instrumental to having success, but also having a sponsor in your organization too. So, who is going to be at that table rooting for you for that promotion within your own company? So I see it twofold as really having a mentor that you can be trusted, but also having someone from the executive team that's also going to be speaking up for you when you're on your behalf on when you can't be in the room.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, I had a mentor early on, like yourself. It was a male, but it's great to have male mentors. But to your point, to have a female mentor who's been there, done that, has overcome those hurdles, who can coach you, it makes a difference because you can relate to each other, right? And it's hard. And somebody who can experience or who has experienced what you're about to go through is really beneficial and helpful, right? And also somebody that you can reach out to when you're going through those different steps throughout your career, and that you can bounce things off. and also in your organization, if there's somebody that you can talk to as well. I think that's a good point, and someone who can be your advocate. It's kind of like selling, right? It's like strategic selling.
It
Who's
is.
the coach? Who's the individual that you can go to in this? It's kind of like the selling process about selling yourself, right? That's really what it's all about. So,
Yeah, and my sponsor in my organization is a man. So it's the president of our company, Kevin McGann. He's, been a huge advocate for me within my career here. So it doesn't always have to be a woman.
right, yeah, that's great, yeah. And what do you see as unique hurdles for leaders in 2023 now, within the industry?
So I see, with the smaller startup companies, obviously there's been a change in the banking industry. So getting funding has been quite an issue for startups, right? So that has changed. Also, labor shortages, having the shortages of staffing in the hospitals and budget constraints. Around that, it's harder to look at new technology and get things approved on contracts, but also training new technology within the staff, because the staff seems to be changing. There's a lot of traveling nurses right now, and a lot of traveling staff. So training, educating. So, when you train someone, say, on a new robotic navigation system, and you train a certain staff, they may not be there for the next case. So those have been some of the big challenges I'm seeing. But also, there's so many companies trying to enter the market, and there's so much competition. So, being with a company that has really unique technology will set you up for success versus commodity items. But, it's harder to enter those markets, right? So there's less. Hospitals are approving less products. They're going to sometimes 3-vendor systems. So it's just a very interesting time to navigate.
And so how do you, like, you've been so successful, with your business and launching new products, what's made you successful? Is it the people you hire? Is it your strategy? Is it your focus? Or all of it, for that matter?
A little bit of both. I am definitely a laser focused person and have a goal. So say with a new technology, I always find a niche. So find a niche in the market, because even with these 3-vendor contracts, if you have something that's unique, say an implant that goes in smaller than any other, there's a carve out where you can get into it. So just even writing a letter to the VAC committee and understanding how it's different, and you have a surgeon champion who wants it, then you can usually get that product approved. So there's always creative ways to navigate. I just don't take no for an answer. I figure out solutions of how to and why. So it's just being really creative and looking around corners and really understanding the technology in the market and listening. I noticed that a lot of people have a widget, and they go in and they want to sell that certain widget that they went in, because you may have a sales goal of, you need to sell your TLIF implant and grow at 20%. Well, that surgeon is having a problem with his current lateral or his current pedicle screw, or, a knee implant. And you're not listening to what the customer needs and wants immediately. And really, I think as salespeople, we need to be better listeners and listen not only to our audience, our surgeons, but also our distributors, the hospital approval, and also the people that work with us, because they're the feet on the street that are really giving you the feedback. So listening and finding solutions to problems are always key to have a laser focus and quickly, find solutions to problems and immediate success.
That's such a great point, because especially with startups or new, technologies that we have, entrepreneurs are in love with their product, right? And so listening can be hard for them. I know, working with some clients, that they get really wrapped up with, what they think is the best, greatest thing. And I try to get them to step back and really help me understand what makes you unique and what are customers saying. So that, if I'm trying to get you great talent to join your organization to sell for you, I need to really understand what's the value prop here. Why would they leave a great job to come to you, right?
Right.
So it's really getting them to step out of, they're in love with their product. So
Yes.
it really is hard. And to your point, it is, what's the benefit, not the feature of everything that's going on there, right? So
Yes.
that's the hard part. That's for sure. So how do you stay up to date with the latest advances in medical technology? You did mention earlier that you go to conferences and you sit in on sessions whenever you can, but what else do you do, or what else would you recommend to individuals that you do?
I think LinkedIn is a great resource to see really what's going on in the market, reading the ortho spine news. I actually read other companies, their financial reports to understand where they're growing and how they're growing. Even just speaking to recruiters, they have a wealth of knowledge. And are on the pulse of all what's happening with new startup companies and especially OUS companies, and who is trying to bring things to market, because that's where most of the innovative technology does come from, as OUS companies trying to bring new technology, especially with robotics, to the market. So really staying on the pulse and going outside of just your field and really going to different conferences, whether it's like Women in MedTech and listening virtually. I am a member of Chief, so I listen to a lot of different items there. But always learning and always being podcast. There's a lot of medical sales podcasts as well now. So when I'm driving or I'm on a plane, I'm always learning and always listening to something different.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing information, and whether it's women in the medical device industry that we can inspire from what you've shared today, or anybody who's interested in the medical device industry. I think that there's lots of nuggets that you've shared today, Lisa, and I wish you all the best in your business and your career and what's next for you. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. That's been fantastic. Thank you
For having me.
Oh, you're welcome.